Welcome, everybody. This is the 200th CityLaw Breakfast. Amazing. And on your tables is a brochure, and it lists every speaker and date and topic. It is a who's who, or perhaps who was who, of city government. And one of the nice things to do is to go through it and mark off the ones you remember. I did. It turns out that I missed only 4 when I was on sabbatical. The only other person who has that record is my wife, Alice Sandler, who has been the warm hostess of all of these breakfasts. And without her advice, couldn't have done it. We want to thank everybody for coming today. This is a nice turnout, and I'm really delighted that we have Janno Lieber here to speak. Anthony Crowell usually welcomes people, but he is unfortunately on a travel on behalf of the law school and is not here today. I want to thank first our longtime loyal founding sponsors, Consolidated Edison, Verizon, and the law firm of Greenberg Traurig. You've been with us, and I'm delighted to say it's been a wonderful relationship. I also want to thank those with the gold star on your name tag, those of you who voluntarily contributed. Do I ask you to stand up to give you applause? Those of you who've kept these, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, the law school is really appreciative of all the support for these breakfasts, and I thank you so much. As I said, this is the 200th breakfast, and we're delighted to welcome Janno Lieber to the 200th breakfast. He's a graduate of Harvard College and NYU Law School. He's a builder. Janno Lieber is a builder. Before becoming MTA chair, he headed MTA Capital Construction and Development, where he was responsible for completing the East Side Access and the 2nd Avenue subway. In the private sector, he spent 14 years leading redevelopment of the World Trade Center for the Silverstein properties. He's been a transportation regulator and official. He held high positions in the U.S. Department of Transportation, and he and I overlapped in the Koch administration. He is a leader. He is now in his 5th year at MTA chair. In that capacity, he successfully completed the 2024 capital plan and is embarked on the 25-29 capital plan, a $68 billion plan. I've often thought that managing public transportation is a matter of generational ethics. The ethic is to pass on the subway and bus fleets to the next generation in a condition of good repair. Managing the subway and bus system is a long-term, never-ending job, a relay race. Janno Lieber is the 15th person to chair the MTA. He holds the baton for this generation, and he is running a superb race. He led the successful fight for congestion pricing. He's managing a massive $68 billion capital program. And best of all, he is out litigating the Trump administration. We are fortunate to have a man of his talents and courage holding the baton for this generation. Please welcome MTA Chair Janno Lieber to the podium.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you for that very kind introduction. Ross is an understated guy, but you know, we talk about generational change. When I worked in the Koch administration, Ross was one of my heroes. He was the DOT commissioner and really began, it's lost in the midst of time sometimes, but really began the switch towards focusing more on pedestrians and bicyclists. And we've obviously made huge progress on that front. There's a long way to go, but I just want to acknowledge it kind of started in your era. So thank you, Ross. So thank you for having me. As you said, it's been 4 years since I took on this job of being acting chair and then chair, and it feels like, well, a lot more than that. But remember where we were, because you know, and Tim Minton is here, and he's always hawking me to like make news. But I think sometimes we really have to think about, and Ross, you're right about thinking about it in terms of passing the baton. how much progress we've made. And it's not been that long, but where were we 4 years ago? New York was, coming back from COVID, but we just gotten through Delta, and then we were in the Omicron phase. And remember, had just made some progress in the MTA and in the city, bringing people back to life and into the city. And we were down 90% in ridership, and then Omicron hit, and we lost a lot of ground. Crime was on the rise. People were worried about cities in general, and I still have on my desk a New York Times article from that era in 2021 calling out all the doomsaying about New York in particular. And, sort of capping that for me was a moment when, during my confirmation hearing with the state Senate, Liz Kruger, who is among the best informed and most influential people in Albany, paused questioning me about all the problems with the MTA budget, which were pretty severe, and asked me, "Janno, why do you even want this job?" And she got a few laughs. It was nervous laughter, because the zeitgeist in those days was real. It was incredibly pessimistic. But here is the thing. I grew up in the city in the 1970s riding graffiti-covered trains that broke down every 5,000 miles. And I still, have difficulty getting off a train that's moving in the right direction in the hopes the express will come. I've seen the MTA, and all of you have seen the MTA come back from that era, amazingly. And we've seen the city bounce back again and again and again. And I spent, a lot of time working on the downtown rebuilding after 9/11, but we've all seen it. It's, not just 9/11, the financial crisis of 2008 to 2011, the Superstorm Sandy, and a million other things. And I believe passionately that in this city, transit is our thing. It's what makes the city possible. And, one of my catchphrases is, for New Yorkers, transit's like air and water. We need it to survive. And because of that, I always was confident that our civic, business, and political leadership, some of whom are represented in this room today, would never allow the MTA to go down the drain. And I always say, never bet against New York. And that bet, and the bet on our civic, business, and political leadership and advocates who are such a powerful force in the New York constellation, we were right. So after confirmation, I'm going to take you through a little bit of where we were and where we've come. We rolled up our sleeves and laid down a set of strategic priorities. And I'm going to take you through it a little bit. First on that list had to be reviving ridership to help the city's business district and the city's economy recover from the down days of COVID. But we also had 8 or 9 other ones: delivering better and more reliable service, basic stuff, promoting safety for customers and for employees, increasing the appeal for customers by really surging accessibility, better communication, and also new amenities like tap and ride. Restoring the MTA's financial stability, a huge issue. Continuing to strengthen and expand the transit network through the capital program, and obviously very much a current topic, creating a better bus system. I am proud to say that we have made huge progress on literally every one of those fronts. 4 years later, this is a different MTA that we've got going. For starters, ridership is back. Across the agency, we're up 65% compared to 2021, 6.5 million, sometimes 7 million riders a day. This didn't happen by accident. We at the MTA knew that doubling down on service, which is priority number 2, was the only way to get people to come back to the city. And we had to run more service, and it had to be reliable. So unlike the major transit systems in the rest of the country, Philly, Chicago, looking today at potentially 40% cuts in service, we increased subway service on 13 lines, 40% more service on the Long Island Railroad, and not news, but we're even extending service on Metro North up to Albany. To this day, we're looking for more ways to increase service. On Accessoride, which not everybody pays attention to. But we run a paratransit system in this city, which is bigger in terms of ridership than almost every other city's mass transit system entirely. But we're doing 50% more trips each month than pre-COVID, as 95% on-time performance has generated huge demand among seniors and the disabled and people who depend on paratransit. And on-time performance in general has never been better in our history. It's rarely been better. The subway is currently in the mid 80% for on-time performance, which is a huge improvement over pre-COVID days, especially the low point of the summer of hell when we were in the 50s percentage-wise in terms of on-time performance on subways. The commuter railroads, however, are the real superstars. Long Island Road and Metro North had their best years ever last year, 97 and 98% on-time performance respectively, and they're on track to reproduce those results this year. And equally important, and I think the Daily News has their crime correspondent here. That always makes me nervous when the crime guy is sent to the MTA events. But the truth is that safety, which was our strategic priority number 3, is on the upswing. Crime this year is down 6% and more than 14% versus 2019. So we're 14% down in crime since 2019. And, you know, again, that wasn't by accident. We've been working with the state under Governor Hochul's leadership and the city to get more police into the system and more effective mental health outreach. I believe if you ride, you recognize that the disproportionate impact that our most severely mentally ill people were having on our public space has diminished over time, and it's because of the Scout program and other MTA and city-sponsored initiatives to bring some of those people indoors so they can get help. And thanks to Governor Hochul, we've installed literally tens of thousands of security cameras across the system, platform barriers on 100 subway stations, brighter lighting, and it's really no surprise as a result of all of these initiatives that people are actually starting to feel safer in the system. Our most recent pulse, we do monthly surveys. We do surveys of hundreds of thousands of people to get deeper feedback. But the most recent survey has almost 70% of respondents giving a favorable rating on safety and the feeling of safety in the system, which is up 15 points from just last year. And we know that safety equals ridership, but the revival was also helped by improvements to the customer experience. Strategic priority number 4, to increase accessibility. We've added almost 40 new ADA stations. This is an area where we are going 3, 4, 5 times as fast as our predecessors in terms of adding accessibility to the New York subway system. We've got 40 stations since 2020 to finish. 30 are under construction right now. We're going to have 60 more completed by the end of the new capital program. We've upgraded customer service tools like the MTA app and the hugely popular Long Island Railroad and Metro North train time apps, which get 4.9 on Google Play, which is shocking for a government app. And to help with affordability, the word that's on everybody's lips these days, we really doubled down on City Ticket, which is the discounted fare for in-city travel on the commuter railroads. No secret, the Long Island Railroad and Metro North didn't stop in the Bronx and in Queens as much as I think those communities deserved, and we have increased service dramatically inside the city of New York. We have reduced the fares, and the result is that literally hundreds of thousands of people have saved, all told, $100 million on commutation inside the city. Those are, again, people in Southeast Queens and the Bronx who otherwise would have a much longer commute if they took a bus and a subway or whatever. And they're saving an average of 30 minutes daily. A lot more access to jobs and education and opportunity when you have access to a fast commute. And we're successfully transitioning from the Metro card to tap and ride, an easier and more convenient way to pay the fare. It's not always an easy transition, but 90% of customers has switched over already. It's much further along the curve than we expected to be at this point. And our reduced fare customers, seniors, disabled, and fair fares customers, people who are expected to be slow to switch, have switched even faster than customers at large. So people are really taking advantage of this this new tap and ride system. Student Omni, we had a huge problem that students were in huge numbers basically fare evading and getting to the habit of fare evading because the old pass system was not working. We created a new Student Omni card. It works 365 days a year, 7 days a week, and it has more rides on it, and the take-up among students has been extraordinary. We are training the subway riders and the mass transit riders of the future to be part of this New York tradition of paying fares and participating. Now, none of this would have been possible if the MTA was still in financial freefall like it was in 2021 when I took up the cudgels. Like every other transit agency during COVID, our finances took a huge hit, loss of ridership, and a lot of unexpected COVID-related expenses. Money came from Washington, but it dried up pretty quickly. So coming out of COVID, we were looking at a $2.5 billion annual budget deficit. In 2023, Governor Hochul championed a budget deal that not only assured the MTA's survival, but allowed us to keep putting on more service. This is a distinction, again, between us and many other great transit systems nationwide. We were able to get the political leadership, Governor Hochul in particular, was able to figure out how to make sure that we would be financially stable coming out of COVID, so we could really continue to serve and grow service on all of our systems. And that is the reason, in large part, why we will next month the MTA board is going to be voting on the third consecutive balanced budget, 3 years in a row. But make no mistake, the MTA played a big part in this story because we proposed and then implemented an aggressive cost-cutting system where we're saving now $500 million a year without cutting service, without cutting people, just by identifying efficiencies. You know, we've used a lot of data. We created a consulting operation inside the company to work with each of our operating agencies to find efficiencies. So we used all this data that we're now collecting and analyzing to adjust our maintenance schedules to be more efficient. We renegotiated contracts with our cell phone carriers. We got rid of unused software licenses. Do you know how much money is spent on giving people access, software licenses that they literally never use? We went through the whole MTA and identified that and started to save money. And we made it a policy that, if you got a laptop, you get a desktop, you get an iPad, you get your choice of one. And we're saving literally millions and millions of dollars by like 50 or 100 other initiatives along those lines. Also, all told, we are on track to achieve not only that $500 million per year, we're going to achieve $2 billion of extra savings in the next 4 years. So the bottom line, and this is something that, I talk about, I'm not sure I can ever get the press to write about it, but although we are providing a ton more service than before COVID, and even though it costs us more than $300 million a year to operate that huge 700,000-foot Long Island Railroad terminal in the basement of Grand Central Madison, we're actually reduced the MTA's budget. We're spending less in real terms than before COVID, doing more with spending less. How many other government agencies can say that in this day and age, especially one with the scale of the MTA? Priority 6, strengthening and expanding the network, principally through the capital program. There was not much confidence in the MTA. Ross gave me credit for 2nd Avenue Phase 1 and East Side Access. I'm not sure I want those. Those were the two projects that gave the MTA a really crappy reputation for project management because they ran over budget and behind schedule. But we have turned that around, delivering project after mega project on time and on, or in many cases, under budget. The L train project. Remember, we were going to try to have to close down the L train for 2 years. Remember that whole drama? Well, we didn't, and we got the project done 6 months early and $100 million under budget. All those projects you heard about, this is a New York City crowd, but on Long Island, we did huge projects, 10-mile-long third track project, also $100 million under budget. Those successes allowed us to get credibility in Albany and allowed the governor to get the legislature to sign off on that $68 billion capital program that Ross mentioned, the largest capital program in MTA history. It is mostly unsexy stuff like power, signals, structure. Does anyone want to ride on a elevated train structure that really hasn't been inspected and upgraded in 100 years? Not me. So we are taking on all that stuff that my predecessors, because they didn't have the money or the political support, or for whatever reason, did not get to. This is a system that has been evaluated as being worth $1.5 trillion. And you have to invest the capital to maintain it. Basic business school principles say you got to be spending a lot more than we are, but at least we're increasing it just to head towards a state of good repair. And just yesterday, we rolled out a new, easy-to-use dashboard that uses open data. We have billions and billions of lines of data already in open data, but organizes it in formats that are really accessible so that journalists and researchers and regular New York commuters can really figure out what is going on with that project, especially the ones that are causing my commute to be delayed or giving me outages on the weekend. Everybody can figure out what is going on with our projects. But we're not entirely foregoing the expansion side of the capital program. Governor Hochul, huge fan of the Interborough Express, this new 14-mile-long project that's going to connect Brooklyn and Queens directly, 30-minute ride end-to-end, projected to have over 200,000 new riders. People who are now, many of us have taken that ride where you want to go from Brooklyn to Queens or vice versa, and you got to go through Manhattan. It takes an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half. That is going to be a real game changer, and it's going to provide service to a lot of communities that are rail deserts. And they have buses, but you really want to connect East Flatbush and Maspeth and some of those neighborhoods to the rail system. The Second Avenue subway is moving forward aggressively. Finally, transit justice for East Harlem, the most transit-dependent community in New York City, which was promised a subway when they started knocking down the L's in the 1940s. And now, finally, we are pushing that Second Avenue subway project up to East Harlem and into Central Harlem. And we're working with Amtrak, or more accurately, fighting with Amtrak, to advance the Metro North Penn Access project, which will add railroad stations all through the East Bronx, areas where people have to rely on express buses and really don't have access to the wealth of jobs that are to the north in Westchester and Connecticut, the fastest growing piece of on a percentage basis, of our entire regional transportation system is people going from the Bronx to jobs and education in Westchester and Connecticut. And folks in Parkchester and Co-op City and Morris Park deserve access to jobs and education, everything else New York has to offer. We got to get that project done. And I'm also excited about the fact that we can finally, we talk about generational change and generational cycles, Ross. Dick Ravitch bought a ton of subway cars, and that was the beginning of the big turnaround of the MTA in the early 1980s, going from that image of the graffiti-covered derelict system to something very different. Those cars are now aged out, and they need to be replaced, and we're going to buy 1,500 subway cars and 500 rail cars and a ton of buses to bring our fleet, our rolling stock fleet, into a state of good repair. Revenues from congestion pricing are going to pay for a lot of this. So getting that program off the ground is probably the biggest success of this past year. The cameras went live a year ago next month. Controversial, but we did all the preparation. How often does government do all the preparatory work, and the implementation comes off virtually without a hitch, and people see the benefits almost immediately. There've been travel time. You know who loves congestion pricing? The drivers are now, in polling recently, are letting us know they love it because they're saving so much time. The people who drive to work in Manhattan, who spend $50 to park, actually do value their time. I'm not shocked. And we got 20 million fewer vehicles on the road coming to the city so far this year. Pedestrian safety and air quality have improved. Noise complaints are way down. And the central business district has more pedestrians and more shoppers and more workers than ever before. All the drama about nobody will ever come to Manhattan again that you hear from a certain tabloid did not come to pass. So we got a full year, statutorily required 1-year evaluation report. It's going to come out soon, but let me tell you, it's all going to be good news. So we have done a lot in these last 4 years, but the one area where I'm not prepared to declare victory is the push to build and deliver a better bus system. We have made significant progress. Speeds have been increased. We've introduced camera enforcement, automatic camera enforcement. You block the bus lane, you park in the bus stop. If you're there for more than 5 minutes on a lot of lines now, you will automatically get a ticket as a result of the cameras that are on top of the buses. That is progress. And people get the message. There's only 8% recidivism. So people, when they get one ticket, they get the message. It has been a cause of success. We've redesigned the bus networks. No one had redesigned the bus map in Queens for like 50 years, and we still had routes that were going to trolley barns that were knocked down when the Dodgers still played in Brooklyn. And that is also made progress. But we have been hamstrung by the city's inability to deliver on the legally required bus lanes and busways. So there's a new administration coming that's made buses a huge piece of their campaign, and we welcome that. I am thrilled by the emphasis on affordability, both Governor Hochul and the soon-to-be mayor, and I look forward to working with them. We are lucky to have, and this may be the first time we haven't had extreme pro-transit forces in all of the power centers in Albany. But some things don't need a ton of analysis and negotiation. And one of them is the law about bus lanes and busways. So I do expect to see, after the inauguration day, pretty fast, that the city will move quickly to make good on those legally required commitments and to help us make more progress on the bus system. I have covered a lot of ground. I probably talked a little too long. Thank you for listening. But I just want to emphasize this is a positive moment. We have trouble in New York enjoying the positive, right? This is a positive moment for transit riders, for New Yorkers, and for everybody who cares about the future of cities. So I'm going to keep talking about some of that progress and the challenges in front of us, but I'm thrilled. Thank you again for listening, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you, Ross.
Okay, as you all know, line up at the microphones, please.
Well-behaved crowd.
Well, we try. It's a law school. We try, and please make the questions short or shortish so that we can have as many people as possible speak. So let's start on this side.
Good morning. Can you talk about the Mamdani effect in a larger perspective? You mentioned or alluded to the new administration as far as lanes are concerned, bus lanes are concerned. Yeah. What about the free buses for all program and so on like that?
Yeah,
how's that going to impact?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this. I think, my view on this is we are all passionate about affordability, and there are a lot of ways to accomplish it. I have said, and I keep saying, I think you need to study each of these ideas intensely. If we're going to talk about free buses responsibly, we need to understand what would be the consequence of the mode shift, people moving from subway to bus. How many buses would we need? Would we need more bus drivers, more depots? What would be the effect on the revenue from subways, which would remain? Will people get off the free bus and pay for the still charged subway? I mean, all those issues we studied congestion pricing for 5 years, and it was the reason we implemented it successfully. I think that the idea of having a major change of our entire transit system deserves to be studied. And I look forward to working with a pro-transit mayor who's interested in affordability and real results.
Let me just add. Please state your name as you speak.
William Stanford Voss, welcome back. Janno, it's time for you to go. Last 4 years, you killed the MTA, which has some money thrown away. Additionally, you forced me to walk to Jacoby Hospital from 180th Street and Katona Avenue, which is equivalent to committing suicide. Are you serious? You think forcing me to walk to Jacoby Hospital from 180th Street and Katona Avenue helps me? You think helping me by doing it? One thing you helped me do is save money. You helped me hoard money. I spoke to you about this a while ago. So far, you never apologized to me, nor did you compensate for my loss. What kind of nonsense is that?
No, okay.
I think so. No,
Okay,
no response.
Answer. I'm Michael Myers, President of the New York Civil Rights Coalition. My question, I've asked you before, I'm going to ask again, about the handicapped, the disabled, people who can't get up the stairs, and the elevators in the system and up above the system are always broken. The escalators don't work, and I want to know what the hell you're going to do about it. Now, I even identified to your staff specific examples of that, including the one on 14th Street, East Side. And they explained that these subway systems or these escalators and elevators are not in our control, but in somebody else's control, maybe a department store. What the heck is that about?
Okay.
Don't you have control?
So you and I we've had a lot of just back and forth about this. So let's just be clear. We're doing elevator and escalator replacement. We used to be way behind state of good repair. Things were being forced to last a lot longer. We literally in this capital program have caught up because we have done so many elevator and escalator replacements. You're right. When we're doing the work, it has impacts on people that they can't use those escalators and elevators. But we have actually cut the amount of time that it takes to replace an elevator and an escalator by a third. So we're going to keep pushing to make those shorter impacts. I know you personally are passionate about this. We're going to keep working to make it better. The escalator on 14th Street, I know you don't like hearing about it, is under the control of a private developer. We hope that that won't be the way that the city gives out zoning bonuses in the future, because private developers have not done a good job. Even, God, I mean, I'm a Nets fan, but the Barclays Center doesn't do a great job of maintaining their new escalators. So we're on them. The MTA escalators are at 98% availability. We have to work with and lean on, with the city's help, some of these private developers who are not doing as good a job. Thank you for your passion on this topic.
You're Cohen. With regard to your service up to Albany, will you be using standard Metro North equipment? And will the state give you a special allocation to cover any deficits?
Yes. We both answer yes to both questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Gorman Riley, fare beating. The installation of the barriers over the turnstiles have been very effective. I've only seen one very tall person make it. However, what are you doing about the buses? They continue just to walk in the back door as they have done before, and it's annoying, and it must be a big drain on the budget.
Listen, number one, subways, we have made a ton of progress on fare evasion. Fare evasion is down. I made a speech about this at Albany, only 3 or 4 months after I was confirmed, and people rolled their eyes at me, like, why are you making such a big deal about this? Fare evasion, I don't think it's just a financial issue. I think it kind of breaks down the social compact in the sense that the public space is, in New York, we really depend on the sense that we share the public space, that, this is a joint operation and everybody has to play by the same rules. Fare evasion, again, it's not a moral issue, but it kind of sends a message that this is a disorderly place and everybody's not playing by the same rules and makes some people feel like suckers. So it's not going to work. We've cut subway fare evasion by 35% in the last year or in 5 quarters. by a combination of physical fortifications to the turnstiles, which are outdated, but we've done that, and also dealing with, the way that the gates were always being opened and a million other things. So we're not relying strictly on enforcement, and bottom line, we're going to have new subway gates as part of the new capital program in stations that serve 75% of our ridership. Buses are tougher. You can't have a cop on every bus. The city of New York, I have to remind empirically, you guys in the 1994 agreement with the transit police becoming part of NYPD are supposed to police the bus system. They don't have a lot of cops for that purpose. We are going to move, once tap and ride is fully implemented, we're going to move to European-style fare payment enforcement, where you'll have fare agents, not cops, who could go up to people and say, can you show me your phone or your Omni card, and I can validate that you paid. And we hope that that will ultimately help us to make more progress on the bus issue, which I think got escalated quickly during COVID when we told people get on the back and don't pay, and we never put the toothpaste back in the tube. We have to do better on buses. I hope that the new administration will help us, even though there's obviously some ideological debate to take place.
My name's John Steinberg. I'm going to start with a compliment. I took the Q train from 86th Street to Times Square. It took 9 minutes, which is amazing, and it does it every time. On the issue of social compact,
Yeah.
I was at the 125th Street station last month. As I'm exiting, 4 guys come in the wrong way through the emergency exit.
Yeah.
There are 3 cops standing right there. 2 of them are looking at their cell phones. I go up to the other one and I say, what's happening with this? And the guy looks at me with absolutely no affect and he goes, we don't enforce that. What do you say about that?
I think those cops know better, and if you're going to be a cop, Jessica Tisch has done a great job, and the NYPD has been the key to pushing down crime. And so their deployments are set by the NYPD. They're making people feel safer. But if you're going to be at the mezzanine or you're going to be at the gate, you need to enforce the fare. I think individual cops know that, and if the leadership saw what you saw, that cop would be in for some kind of discipline. It's disappointing. The 125th Street station is a place that feels really disorderly. I'm not going to lie about it. There are lots of challenges there. There are lots of cops there, and they make a difference. But if they're there, they ought to be paying attention to what's going on. With fare beating, we get about 100 guns a year with fare evasion enforcement. Even we're not going crazy with fare evasion enforcement. We get about 100 guns a year. This is part of keeping New York safe. It's not just about collecting fares.
Thank you.
I'm Gerard Sofian. I'm a regular user of the G train, so you might know what I'm going to ask about. I appreciate a lot of the service improvements, but the trains are too short. It's a disservice to your customers, I believe.
So never tell a passionate subway rider he's wrong about anything. But we keep looking at the ridership patterns, and we keep reconfirming that having more service, more frequent service, albeit with the shorter trains, is the right way to go on the G train. We're watching it very closely. When service grows to a point where we need the longer trains, we'll obviously consider it. But right now, that's the best strategy. And I hope, at least, even if you're mad at me, you're appreciating that we're putting the new trains, especially the open gangway trains, on the G train, because that's partly to facilitate people spreading out. As they, because with the short trains, people tend to end up at one end of the train sometimes, and we're trying to be respectful of the fact that people need to spread out there.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tabitha Kanane from the New York City New Liberals. How might value capture taxation help fund future subway construction?
I'm not allowed to hop off the stage and give a hug to a questioner, am I? The rest of the known universe, people build infrastructure with value capture. The inevitable value that's created by building transit can be, and it has been used for a generation to create value that can be used to build the transit. The city of New York, to their credit, Dr. Ruff and Bloomberg, used value capture to pay for the MTA to build the 7 train. And it created Hudson Yards. It made Hudson Yards possible. We ought to be doing more of that. The problem is jurisdictional fragmentation. The city never wants to give up the future property tax benefits of whatever new infrastructure is going to be built. I think this is a smart new administration that's pro-transit, and I hope that they will, that they will get the message that we ought to follow the rest of the world and find a structure where we can have value capture. Doesn't mean all the value goes to the MTA at all, but you should capture some of that value to facilitate building improvements, and more quickly.
Hi, Janine Kiley, I chair CB2 Manhattan's Transportation Committee. I have specific questions about speed and safety. Speed, is there a way to fast track the small repairs, fixing light bulbs, removing scaffolding, all sorts of little things that make the user experience better and safer? And also in Community Board, you recently added an NYPD station to West 4th Street. Is that going to be rolled out elsewhere? But we have scaffolding problems on Broadway. And there's a lot of things I know different task force on the NYPD are working on it, but what can you do to fix the easy things much faster? And how do we who do we contact to make that happen?
Well, I'm definitely not in control of scaffolding. You're talking about scaffolding on the street?
Scaffolding around the subway stations and so forth.
Like
Relating
I'm definitely not in control of that. We got plenty to work out, but you're right. That is a scourge, and it makes me crazy when I walk down Broadway in the financial district that there are 5 blocks in a row. So I get it. Listen, you're not wrong. We should always listen to folks who are close on the ground about small things that can make the system feel more inviting and less, and less chaotic, and better customer experience. Just let us know. We do have a great government and community relations team with people who have specific geographic responsibilities. Young McCarthy right there is their overseer. You like being called young? Yeah, okay. If you can get in touch with what we call GCR, the Government Community Relations Team of the MTA, and they will bring it to the operators, and we will try to get it done.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Truman. I noticed that you mentioned Central Harlem when you discussed the 2nd Avenue subway. Yeah. And I was wondering if that was a reference to the $16 million feasibility budget that was in last year's state budget to look at extending the 2nd Avenue subway along 125th Street to Broadway, and if you could give any updates about like timeframes or when we could see more information.
No, I mean, I think that the 2nd Avenue subway, so everybody knows, we have let 2 of the contracts. The big one that we did, which is about a $2 billion contract, is for the tunnel boring to create all the tunnel that's north of the 106th Street, what will be the 106th Street station. So that project's underway. Newsflash, we got feedback from the federal government last night, literally, that they had. It's not a secret. They, want to change the rules on what we call DBE, which is the federal program for minority, women-owned, and small businesses. And they had invoked that change that they're just in the process of starting as an excuse to stop 2nd Avenue subway funding, stop funding that project. We got feedback from them, and we will be acting on it promptly. I mean, I think they said we have like 30 days to answer their questions. So that project, I think is going to keep moving. It hasn't stopped at all since, notwithstanding the federal announcement. 2nd Avenue subway has been moving forward on the same track. But to your question, could we also take advantage of this opportunity to continue the tunnel boring west from where it will end now, which is, the station's at Park to Lex. The tunnel boring will only go to Lenox, 6th Avenue. Could it go to Broadway, which is where the number 1 is, and you also connect to the 8th Avenue line? That's something we're studying right now. It's an exciting idea to have the sort of maximum connection all the way across 125th Street to all those subways. and potentially even to a Metro North connection to 125th Street, which is also being studied as a future project. Not just 125th and Park, but if the Hudson line is brought down the west side. So we're excited about it. We're studying it. I don't have any news on that right now.
Good morning. I'm Lou Venich from Sunnyside, Queens. Congratulations on the MTA's ongoing progress across the board. Here's a Penn Station question.
Goody.
One of the effects of the recovery of transit ridership regionally is a reemerging concern about allocating train operations capacity at Penn Station. And I know this is an issue currently as you contemplate adding Metro North service to the station. What's the MTA's posture on working with the other Penn Station railroads to allocate capacity, especially during peak periods?
So, it's not going to surprise you that New York is paying for Gateway, like 25% of the cost of the Gateway project, which is exclusively going to benefit service for Amtrak and New Jersey Transit. So New York's doing a lot to try to help those operations, which benefit the city and regionally, grow and become more successful. What people don't talk about is the same way I struggle with Amtrak. Somebody's got to struggle with Amtrak about that infrastructure on the New Jersey side that has caused New Jersey Transit to go down the tubes, right? It's not a secret, right? Lou, you spent a lot of time on this regional stuff in the old days, right? So we're happy to work with everybody, but we're not giving up slots that the Long Island Railroad and Metro North are going to use. We're happy if there's a strategy for growing and sharing the capacity, by all means. But right now, because since we built that new corridor, have folks seen the corridor between 7th and 8th Avenue and Penn Station? I mean, it feels like a modern transportation facility in that part of Penn Station. Then you turn your head to the south and, you still have what Robert Moses and people who hated transit left us. We've gone from our Penn customers on Long Island Railroad used to be give us 50% customer satisfaction for Penn. They're at 80% now since we built that corridor. So the message we're giving everybody is we're thrilled to talk about improvements to Penn. Let's do it. We ain't going to, our Long Island Railroad customers are not going to put up with tearing up what is now, from their standpoint, a decent system and a decent place to travel through. So whether it's the allocation of slots or the physical above-ground Penn Station, that's our position. We're focused on practical stuff for Penn, like let's have some ventilation that complies with the fire code, maybe. A little more vertical circulation to get people on and off the platforms faster and more easily. Practical stuff that helps the commuters, not gold leaf encomia to a certain person far away.
Thank you.
Hi, Franklin Tang, NYU. So Janno, I want to ask you about the potential of continuing to use existing corridors owned by the city and the MTA. So in your speech, you talked about the IBX having the potential of 200,000 daily riders. And why has that number grown from the current 165,000 estimates? And the other question with adaptive reuse of existing corridors is, would MTA consider QueensLink next after IBX begins construction? Thank you.
So the reason that I'm much more optimistic about ridership is when we have shrunk the travel time dramatically, as we continue to do the engineering and the design of the IBX along that 14-mile corridor, we figured out different ways, incremental changes, to make the travel faster. Using light rail, interestingly, is faster than a subway car, heavy rail, because of their acceleration and deceleration properties and so on. That's what has allowed us to project an increase in the ridership. I love getting more transit out of infrastructure we already have. That's the IBX. That's what Penn Access is about. Amtrak's been running trains on the Hellgate line through the East Bronx. And the Amtrak's predecessors, the New York Central Railroad, for 100+ years. No one stopped in the Bronx. We can improve that line. That's what we're doing. and give people in the Bronx service. More transit out of the same infrastructure. So I love that principle. The Queens Link project has been studied and hasn't yet hit the cost benefit metrics that allow it to justify moving it in front of other projects. But we're going to continue to study it. And I agree with you that use our existing infrastructure. Let's get more out of it.
Oh, good morning. My name is Cassandra Schriffen. I'm from Manhattan. And on East 23rd Street, our neighbors are very concerned about, well, they like the fact that transit is great. We can get around, we can get around fast. But two concerns they have is about congestion pricing. They remember how when we talked about congestion pricing, we kept talking about London and how we were going to give the residents who lived in that area a very good discount. Well, we don't have that discount in Manhattan to come back to our home. And we were wondering why the city kind of sold us on that thing that we were going to be treated like London and everybody was on board. And then London, they paid like $1 and we're paying 10 times that amount.
Yeah,
and sometimes
listen,
25.
I don't know that people sold that we're going to be exactly like London. London has, among other things, a charge for remaining in the zone and idling and circulating. So, people who are driving around, like people in the neighborhood, would get charged for that. In the end, what the special board, Kathy Wild, Carl Weisbrod, the so-called Traffic Mobility Review Board, recommended to us was a system which gave discounts to folks of limited income rather than based on residence. And I'm sympathetic to folks who have the view that you do, but it was focused on making sure the people who are really needy got a benefit rather than everybody who lives in a certain area.
Okay,
That's
so
where it
the
came
other
out.
question was that our seniors on East 23rd Street,
Yeah.
we had the homeless camped out in those shelters for like half a year at a time, the same people.
Yeah.
And then the other one is that the school buses that you said that people who park in the lanes
Bus
get a
lanes.
ticket. Well, what about the school buses that keep the seniors who are handicapped? And we live in a hospital zone, so a lot of people are coming from the hospital who need the bus to pull up to the curb. And we can't pull up to the curb on East 23rd Street and First Avenue because there's always like 10 buses.
Could you bring it now to a conclusion? The people standing will be the last questions.
So I think your point is the right one, which is the buses ought to be able to pull up to the curb, full stop. And that's why this automatic camera enforcement system, which is gradually being expanded throughout the city, I don't know whether it's applying in the specific location you're talking about, but that's why automatic camera enforcement makes sense, so that you don't have to have a cop run around taking down license plate numbers. It's automatic. If you break the rules, you get a ticket in the mail, you don't pay it, starts to pile up pretty fast. So that's our strategy for dealing with that. I hope it'll work for your neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Leah Rambo, non-traditional employment for women. So I live in the Rockaways and I absolutely love with the changes on the A train, from the elevators to the guards, and even in the city to more police officers. My question is about congestion pricing. I did live in Jersey for a short time. And when I do, I still have my Jersey Easy Pass. And it seems like no matter, even though I have the Easy Pass, it's in effect, with congestion pricing, it won't pick it up. And it sends me the ticket or the charge in the mail. I wanted to know if there's a way so that the surrounding states, if they have an Easy Pass, that it can be.
Everybody who's on Easy Pass is supposed to get the benefit of the Easy Pass system. What you're describing sounds like a software failure. So I would ask you to talk to Shanifa Riera, Chief Customer Officer, sitting right there, and we will find out about your account. Because you're everybody, we do, notwithstanding all the dramas, we do not we're not prejudiced against New Jersey people. So we don't treat the New Jersey Easy Pass as different. And Josh Gottheimer will Yeah, we forgive you all the New Jersey history and we treat you irrespective the same. Yeah.
Hi, Steve Browdergam. I'm a retired attorney here in the city. Three questions, but first, can you please stay on the job for 10 more years?
No.
The three questions are, can you speak a little bit about resilience in the system to climate change? Hurricane Superstorm Sandy did quite a number on the system, and there was a lot done to fix that.
So thank you. Like, we're doing a huge amount on resilience and credit. There's Jamie Torres Springer, who succeeded me at this MTA construction development outfit we set up to run all the construction, has a group working just on resilience. We have done, since Superstorm Sandy, a lot of work to protect against a Superstorm Sandy type event, coastal surge, where the next challenge is the other impacts of climate change, which is, extreme heat and torrential rainfall. And one of the most dangerous areas is the Hudson line, which is about really close to the Hudson River and where there is actually sea level rise issues, as well as the impact of torrential rainfall compromising all of the water management infrastructure. So we're doing a huge amount to protect the Hudson line. But more broadly, when we think about torrential rainfall, we think about those videos of water coming into the city, to the stations. And what I'd say is we're doing a ton of stuff. You've probably seen we raised the step all around these areas that have a lot of have history of torrential rainfall and ponding and so on. So it doesn't get down the stairs. We're doing a ton of small stuff. We work with city on identifying why water is getting into stations. But here's the bottom line. When the big stuff goes wrong, there are two reasons, and they're both controlled by the city of New York. One is the curb they pile on asphalt, and eventually the curb gets small and the water starts to get onto the sidewalks, where it goes down the subway grates and ends up in the stations, and you see those cascades. So they have to redo how they're managing the street infrastructure so the water goes, as it's supposed to do, into the catch basins, not up onto the sidewalk where it gets into the subway, down the stairs, or through the vents. And the big one, is they got to expand the capacity of the storm sewer system of the city of New York, which now, when you go beyond 1.5 inches in an hour, bada bing, bada boom, they don't have it, they can't process the water. And where does it get backed up to? The low point, the subway. That's not our infrastructure. So I'm going to ask Mamdani and company, make investments, targeted investments in expanding the capacity of the stormwater management system so that the water doesn't all end up in the subway as it has in a couple of these recent episodes. That's one of my agenda for the new mayor and his friends.
I'm going to go to this side now.
Good.
Hi, David Noonan with Newmark. I have a very big picture question, which is what is the MTA's strategy and approach with regard to threats to federal funding and federal support for transport, given the current administration?
I think, listen, there's a lot of rhetoric, but our approach is let's just be business-like. We'll respond to the questions. I mean, some of the stuff I'm hoping that by the end of 4 years, the Secretary of Transportation isn't scared to get on the subway. I think that's more about him than about New York City subway. We keep providing them with data and information about how much safer it is, there than, other places. But we're just going to continue to be businesslike. The federal laws and rules provide a structure. Congress has a it's one area where there is reasonably bipartisan approach. Even when they're talking about transit versus highways, it seems like the folks in the House want to get along. So we're just going to keep being businesslike and not taking the bait, honestly, on turning transit, which historically has been, it serves everybody. There's no Democratic or Republican road or mass transit system, turning it into the crucible of some of the ideological dramas. So, and Molinaro, who's the head of the Federal Transit Administration, is a New Yorker. He used to be the Dutchess County executive. He knows the Metro North system really well. we're going to just try to keep the rhetoric and the heat down and solve problems and keep going. So far, we're okay, but we're trying to keep that strategy.
Thank you.
Okay. Last
Chris Gay with CBS News New York, asking a question from Marsha Kramer.
The answer is I love Marsha.
I know you do. And that's the right question, by the way. Perfect answer. Just finding out whether or not you're endorsing the mayor-elect's Buses for All, and just a follow-up to that. Are there any philosophical or financial sort of decisions that you have to weigh in making that endorsement?
Yeah, I think I spoke of it earlier. I don't know if you caught it. It's like I'm thrilled to work with we have a really pro-transit governor. We have a really pro-transit legislature. They have done a ton. I'm thrilled that we've now got a super pro-transit mayor. That's good. Are we thrilled that he's determined to help us speed the buses in the city of New York? Absolutely. Free, fast was the first part of his formula for buses. The free part is going to have to be studied. We are committed to affordability, but there are a lot of issues with the idea of free buses, and I alluded to some of them before, both financial issues, operational issues. How many bus drivers would we need? How much will it cannibalize the subway ridership? What does that mean financially? What does it mean operationally? Got to study all that stuff and talk about affordability as the goal. I personally am very focused on affordability for people of limited means. That's where the MTA has made huge progress in discounting. I'm standing in a rich part of Manhattan, so maybe I'll get myself in trouble. I am less concerned about, my old neighbors from when I was growing up who choose to ride the 104 down Broadway on the west side, and who can pay for the bus. I really want to make sure that we focus affordability efforts on people of limited means, and that may mean the subway as well as the bus, but affordability for people who have the most need.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I want to thank Janno Lieber for a really stimulating discussion, and also the questioners. I thought the questions were very good, and I appreciate the shortness of it that allowed so many people to ask questions. As we always do, we'd like to give a product of the scholarship of this law school. This is a little light reading for you. It's called Presidential Visions of Transitional Justice. It's about the American legacy of responsibility and reconciliation over the last 250 years, written by my colleague, Rudy Teitel. It's a terrific legal book, and if you have spare time, I hope that you will read it. We thank you and give it to you, and thanks for the wonderful day this morning. We are delighted so many people came. We'll be back in January with Alvin Bragg.